Boris Johnson has been criticised of sort of providing not so much policy, but a lot of comedy. It seemed to go down very well in Manchester, though. What did you make of it?
I think for people who are struggling to get petrol at the pump or are noticing the supermarket shelves are empty where they would have been full, or noticing that their bills are going up, the jokes are wearing pretty thin. And the problem for Boris Johnson is he offered all punchlines and no plan to deal with the crisis that's unfolding every day, let alone building a plan for that brighter tomorrow he talked about. And what people have got to remember is that, these are Boris Johnson's words now, rather than just a Labour criticism. He's talking about a low skill, low pay, low productivity economy. Well, who's been in power for the last 11 years? He's describing a problem that his own government has created. And worst of all, he's not even offering a real plan of any substance to get to that high skill, high pay, high productivity economy that we would all want to see. And at the moment, every day brings new chaos under the Tories, and working people are paying the price, not just higher prices at the pump or at the till, but they're paying higher prices because of the burden of tax, which is disproportionately falling on working people. And that can't be right.
I mean, he did sort of acknowledge the fact that there had been dithering in the past by the Conservative Party himself, and suggested that now things were going to happen.
Sure, but what things? Where's the plan? Where's the plan to make sure that we sort out the ongoing challenge of distribution across our country? Where's the plan to make sure that we don't end up with this wage price spiral that is going to fuel higher inflation, which will mean people's pay does not stretch as far as it used to be? The value of people's savings, which are already pretty poor, to be honest, won't even be as average poor as they are today. They'll be even worse. And that's what's really worrying, I think, is that there are big challenges. The Prime Minister described those challenges perfectly well, but where's the plan to deal with any of that? That's what's missing.
Morning, Wes. A lot of talk about levelling up. I mean, that surely has been the most used phrase in the last couple of days, hasn't it? But do people really understand what that means?
Well, I don't think the Conservative Party does. It's been really striking at the conference this week. Conservative MPs, Conservative Party members, even members of the Cabinet have been asked what levelling up means. And it's clear that it means all sorts of different things to different people. And that's a big problem for government, because when you're in government, especially if you're setting out a big agenda like levelling up, every part of government needs to know what it's doing. So, if I were trying to level up the country, I'd be saying, well, what are we going to do to narrow the gap between people from the richest and poorest backgrounds? Well, the Tories are just taking 20 quid a week off 5 million families in universal credit, which is going to plunge 200,000 kids into poverty. That doesn't sound like levelling up to me. The Prime Minister described the massive gaps in life expectancy, which is going back right across the country. That doesn't sound like levelling up to me. When you look at infrastructure investment and where it's concentrated, when you look at productivity in the economy and where that's concentrated, it's all very well talking about levelling up, but again, where's the plan to deliver it? And in contrast, last week in our conference down in Brighton, we spelled out a whole range of policies on everything from education and skills to mental health and turning around NHS and social care, a plan to buy, make and sell more in Britain. These are all things that would lead to more jobs, better pay, higher productivity. There's plan there, there's substance there. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do to win back the trust of the voters after the kicking we got at the last election. But we're working hard to listen and do that, and to present a plan that people can find credible and believe in. That these people are in government today. Boris Johnson could today increase pay, increase terms and conditions for people at work, but he's not. He's choosing not to, and they haven't for the last 11 years. And I think that's why the jokes are wearing thin.
Boris Johnson does have a plan for higher wages longer term, but longer term is certainly what he was looking at yesterday. He decided not really at all to focus on the immediate problems, but arguably last week in Brighton, neither did the Labour Party. There was this huge opportunity to sort of capitalise as the opposition on the things like, fuel, gas. And Keir Starmer sort of didn't really use that opportunity. Are you frustrated by that?
No, I think Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, our Shadow Chancellor, in their speech did address today's crises, as well as looking at what we do to build a better future for our country. In fact, just take the HGV driver shortage. There are lots of things the government can and should do In fact, they were warned about this before the summer. So we know that the Ministry of Defence, for example, has a large estate where they spend lots of time training drivers, including issuing HGV suitable licences. So why aren't we asking the MOD to step up and help by getting those people that are in that HGV driver licence backlog? Let's clear the backlog by opening up MOD space. We could do that right now. We know that there is going to be a temporary shortage in HGV drivers. So, let's issue some temporary visas to bring some workers in to deal with that now. That doesn't mean a return to freedom of movement or uncontrolled migration. The whole point of having control of migration is so that when you have these sorts of shortages, you can address them. But it does feel like every day there's new chaos, and it's always somebody else's fault with this government. So, they blame the customers for the petrol shortage at the pumps. I mean, they blame the businesses for the gaps on the shelves. They're blaming, everyone but themselves. I mean, even the huge cull of pigs this week. We've got hunger in this country, and yet we've just slaughtered loads of pigs. They're not even making it to market. Where is the leadership and the grip from the government to deal with these crises? And I just think it's extraordinary, really, that Boris Johnson went through a full 45-minute speech and didn't once talk about the pain that people are feeling in their pockets, or the problems at the pumps, or the problems in the supermarket, or the problems in farming. These are really big problems. Any one of these issues would lead to a Labour government taking an absolute battering. We've got multiple crises, new fronts and problems opening up every day, and absolutely zero leadership from the government. It's just outrageous.
Where's not mentioned was the £20 universal credit uplift, the withdrawal of that, the end of that. We know it was only meant to be a temporary relief. We know that. But do you think it should have ended?
No, not at all. And how can you, against the backdrop that we've got in the economy, especially with rising prices, how can you take over £1,000 a year out of the pockets of people on the lowest incomes? It just doesn't make sense. And not only is it bad for those families that are now going to be really struggling this winter, it's also terrible for their local economies who are having millions of pounds taken out. It's, because that's the thing about, when you haven't got a lot of money, you are spending every penny as carefully as you can, but you are spending it in your local shops, you're spending it in your local supermarkets, you're spending it on essentials, and you suck that money out of the local economy, and high streets are going to suffer more. So it's a kind of double whammy for families and for businesses. And one of the things we've been saying to the government is that we all understand there are difficult choices to be made, but why do you always try and balance the books on the backs of people on low incomes? Why aren't you going after some of those people that have done very well out of the pandemic, who've got broader shoulders, who are wealthier, who don't earn their incomes from going out to work every day like most people, but earn it from things like property investments, shares, dividends, investment portfolios? We should be asking those people to make a bigger contribution. And look, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, I'm afraid the problem with Rishi, it's not that he goes into work thinking, how do I make more poor people suffer or put more kids into poverty? He does not understand what life is like for most people. He's one of the most wealthy men in the country. And look, Rishi's family haven't done badly out of these government business assistance schemes, have they? So, let's put working families first and worry about ourselves later.
There has been a lot of anger and controversy and frustration over the universal credit uplift being cut. I just want to ask, Wes, can you identify one positive for me from the Conservative Party conference?
It's finished.
Wes, come on, Wes. Anything? Come on.
I tell you what, the other thing, Nadhim Zahawi's coming on, the Education Secretary. The government have just announced a kind of a premium to try and get science and maths teachers in some of the poorest parts of the country where education standards are falling behind. So that's one positive. But do you know what the kicker is? It's the reintroduction of a policy they scrapped last year, and it's less generous than it was before. But that was literally the only new policy in Boris Johnson's speech. So I'm sorry, guys, that is the best you can get out of me this morning.
But I had to ask you.